Chapter 8, Marketing Research from Customer Insights to Actions. In this presentation, we will focus on learning objective number 2, which is to describe the 5-step marketing research approach that leads to marketing actions. Every marketing problem faces research challenges. In this section, what we are going to focus on are the first 2 steps of the 5-step marketing research approach, which are step 1 to define the problem and step 2 to develop the research plan. Within this section, we are going to look at an example from Fisher-Price and how they apply the different pieces of the market research process. The first step in the market research process is to define the problem. So when defining the marketing problem, there are 2 elements that need to be focused on. The first element is setting the research objectives, and the second element is identifying marketing actions the research suggests. So first, let's take a couple minutes and talk about the research objectives. So when we're setting research objectives, these objectives are specific measurable goals the decision maker seeks to achieve in conducting the marketing research. So when a marketing department is setting the research objectives, the purpose of research has to be clear in order to take specific marketing actions. If it's not clear, it's going to confuse the issue. Within the process of setting the research objectives, it's really important for marketers to determine what type of research they want to implement when they are actually setting those research objectives. So there are 3 types of marketing research that we're going to discuss: exploratory research, descriptive research, and causal research. Exploratory research provides ideas about a relatively vague problem. So a relatively vague problem could be, why a product may not be satisfactory to customers. That is a vague problem that a marketing department would implement exploratory research to determine why customers aren't happy with the product. The second type of marketing research is descriptive research. Descriptive research tries to find 2 things. 1, the frequency of something that occurs, and 2, the extent of a relationship between 2 factors. So they might use descriptive research to determine, the number of households buying a product versus buying the product of the competitors. So how often is it happening, and what is the extent of the relationship? And then the third type of research is causal research. And causal research is the most sophisticated type of research, and it tries to determine the extent to which the change in one factor changes the other. So good examples of causal research would be things like experiments and test markets. Kind of like when we talked about the movie example and we looked at the test screening. So they tested the movie on the particular target audience that they were presenting to get feedback from them, and then they were going to make changes from there. So the movie and how the movie is changed is dependent on the test screening and the individuals that provide feedback to the movie production company. The second element that needs to be focused on within step 1 of the marketing research process is identifying possible marketing actions. Decision makers are effective when they develop specific measures of success. A measure of success are criteria or standards used in evaluating proposed solutions to the problem. So what they do is they determine what the measure of success is, and that's going to lead to different marketing actions. So if we take a look at the Fisher-Price example that's on your screen, what Fisher-Price is doing is they're testing a toy with the old design of the toy and the new design of the toy. And they're looking at how long the children are playing with the toy to determine what their potential marketing action is going to be. So if children spend more time playing with the old design, the possible marketing action is going to be to continue with the old design and don't introduce the new design. However, if the children spend more time playing with the new design, then their possible marketing action is to introduce the new design and drop the old design. So the measure of success that they are basing their research on is going to determine what action they are going to take next. If all the research outcomes lead to the same marketing actions, then marketing research should not be done, since it would be useless and a waste of money. Marketing researchers know that defining a problem is an incredibly difficult task, and it's not something to be taken lightly. If the objectives are too broad, then it might not be possible to actually research the problem. If the objectives are too narrow, the value of the research may be seriously lessened. So there's kind of a fine balance between the amount of research that's going to be possible to conduct and have the ability to be conducted based on what the actual problem or the objective is that is defined. This is why marketing researchers spend a lot of time in defining a marketing problem precisely, and then they write a formal proposal that describes the research to be done so that there's clarity and everybody knows what the steps are moving forward. So once the problem is defined in step 1 and research objectives have been set and potential marketing actions have been identified, the next step in the process is to develop the research plan. The second step in the marketing research process involves 3 different steps. First, specifying the constraints on the marketing research activity. Second, identifying the data needed for marketing decisions. And then third, determining how to collect data. So first, let's spend a minute talking about the constraints. The constraints in a decision are the restrictions placed on potential solutions to a problem. Common constraints in marketing problems are typically limitations on time and money available to research the problem. So any type of restriction that is going to be placed on any potential solution to a problem is going to be considered a constraint. So if we think back to the Fisher-Price example, they identified their measures of success and their potential marketing actions. They might set 2 constraints for their potential solutions. One could be if they have to make the decision in 10 weeks. That would be a time constraint where they're pressed for time in order to get the research done and get their proposal together. They have to do it all in 10 weeks. Another constraint could be that they might not have a research budget beyond what is needed to collect data in a nursery school. So their budget might say, you have enough money to go to the nursery school and collect data, but once that's done, you can't do anything beyond that. You're limited to the money that you have and then the time frame with 10 weeks. So it's really important to identify the constraints in advance to figure out ways to work around it and work within that budget and time frame when necessary. The second piece of developing the research plan is identifying the data needed for the marketing action. So what do they actually need to determine what actions they're going to take? Often marketing research studies collect a lot of data that are interesting but irrelevant for marketing decisions that result in marketing actions. So you want to make sure that whatever data you're going to collect is going to be relevant to the situation, especially if you're spending time and money to collect the data for that process. So the data that Fisher-Price might collect is, things like the child's favorite colors. Do they prefer, plastic material as opposed to wood material? Should it make noise? Should it not make noise? So they need to identify on the front end what data they need to collect so that they can be successful in collecting relevant data that's going to lead to marketing action. After the constraints have been specified and the data needed for marketing actions has been identified, the third phase is to determine how you're going to collect the data. There are 2 key elements in deciding how to collect data. Those elements are 1, concepts, and 2, methods. So let's first take a look at concepts. Concepts are ideas about products and services. And concepts are used to determine consumer reactions to new products. Marketing researchers, what they'll do is they'll frequently develop a new product concept, which is a picture or some type of verbal description of an offering the firm might offer for sale. So if we think to the Fisher-Price example, their new product concept included a toy that added a noisemaker, they added wheels, and they added eyes, and it made the toy more fun, and it ended up increasing sales. So they developed their concept, they developed a new product concept, they tested it to see how it was going to perform, and then they moved forward from there. The second element of determining how to collect data is identifying methods. Methods are the approaches that can be used to collect data to solve all or part of a research problem. There are some issues in developing a research plan and thinking about the methods. And they ask questions like, can we ask consumers questions that they can answer? So if you think about the Fisher-Price example, and what questions can they ask 3- and 4-year-olds that they're going to be able to answer? Is observing consumers' behavior better than asking them questions? So with the Fisher-Price toy, would they be better off observing the children playing with the toy, or would it be better to ask them questions? And they also have to think about, can they observe behavior without biasing the results? So, can we ask consumers questions they can answer? Is observing behavior better than asking questions? And can we observe behavior without biasing results? Those are all three really important questions and issues that could develop during the research plan development. So what's important for marketers is to find and use methods that other marketing researchers have found successful. Well, where do you go to get this information? Well, information on useful methods is available in things like trade books, textbooks, any handbooks that relate to marketing and market research. Some periodicals and journals summarize useful methods that solve marketing problems. And a great resource is the American Marketing Association. They publish the Journal of Marketing and the Journal of Marketing Research. So these are all really great places to go to gather methods of marketing research that have been used, or methods that have been used by marketing researchers that they found successful. There are two special methods that are vital to marketing research. Those are sampling and statistical inference. Sampling involves selecting representative elements from a population, such as distributors, customers, or prospects, in order to ask them questions, and their answers are then treated as typical of that population. So in class, when we talked about the movie example, and I said for test screenings, they usually bring in, 300 to 400 people, they're using that as a sampling. They're basing the answers of those 300 to 400 people as typical of the entire population of individuals that would be interested in seeing an action-packed movie. The second one is statistical inference. And statistical inference involves drawing conclusions or generalizing the results from the data obtained from the sample taken to the larger population from which the sample was drawn. So what they're doing is they're drawing conclusions from the data, and they're applying that to the larger population. So with sampling, they're selecting representative elements from a population. With statistical inference, they're drawing conclusions and generalizing results from data obtained. And once the marketing researchers have specified the constraints, they've identified the data needed for marketing actions, and they've determined how to collect data using the concepts, the elements of concepts and methods, then they would move on to step 3, which is collecting relevant information and data. This concludes lesson objective 2, which focused on the first 2 steps of the market research process. Step 1, define the problem, and step 2, develop the market research plan. At this point in time, please take the online quiz for Chapter 8, Learning Objective 2, Part 1 and Part 2.